I'm Dimitri Malignan. I'm a French pianist of Romanian origins. I've been studying now in Amsterdam for the last 4 years. And for my last year of master, I've been doing this research about the lives and works of Jewish composers who were killed in the Holocaust. Very early I understood that this topic has been much neglected. Very wide majority of those composers are relatively unknown today, or completely unknown, even 75 years after they died. And their music is not played, not published, and not recorded. And I wondered why. I wondered why such a long oversight. And wouldn't that be giving the Nazis a posthumous victory, in fact? They killed 6 million Jews and eradicated a vital part of classical music as we knew it before 1939. And the fact that we are not able to remember them, I find it quite shameful. And their music is completely forgotten. They suffered a double penalty. They were killed and forgotten. And I find it is our duty as musicians to make their music come to life again. And this is why I had this idea of this Missing Voices project, so a series of concerts with their music. And what we are doing is a cultural restitution.
I'm Eleonore Pameyer, and I'm the founder and artistic leader of the Leo Smit Stichting, the Leo Smit Foundation, which I started in 1996. So we're already almost 25 years working on promoting the music by persecuted composers and also very much forgotten composers. One day, I received a package in the mail, and in it was a score, a handwritten manuscript, and it said Flute Sonata. The composer's name was on it, Dick Kattenburg, and there was a dedication for Ima. Ima had sent me the package. And she had put a little note in the package, and she said, "You should have this piece, and hopefully you will play it." Ima said, "Yeah, Dick Kattenburg wrote this piece for me, and yeah, I never played it, but I always kept it. He was a young composer that I once knew." And that was the only information I had. I started to play the Flute Sonata, and I immediately liked it. And then I played it at a couple of concerts, and I made a recording on a cassette tape, and I sent the tape in the mail to Ima because I thought she can hear the piece finally. And I waited for her reaction, but that didn't come. And after a week, I decided to call her. And I asked, "Did you get my package?" And she immediately started to cry. And she said, "Now I understand. Dick Kattenburg wrote this piece for me. You have to know that I was a very pretty girl, and I had many friends and admirers, and soon I was engaged. And I never really looked at this composer. But now I heard the music, I know what the piece was about. It's a love letter. So, piece is a love letter, and I continued to play it, and I took it on tour to the United States. And then there were announcements on the internet about the concerts, my name, the pianist's name, Marcel Worms, and that we played a sonata by Dick Kattenburg. And then a sort of miracle happened. A cousin of Dick Kattenburg, who lives in Laren, her name is Joyce Bergman van Hessen, she had a new computer and she started to play with it, and on the Google program she put in the name of her mother's family, Kattenburg. Her mother was a sister of the composer Dick Kattenburg. So when she put that in the Google program, she found a website where my concert was announced. And she thought, Dick Kattenburg, my uncle. That's the uncle that we never talked about, because such a tragedy. He was murdered in Auschwitz. And then suddenly she had an idea to go to her attic. And she knew that on her attic there were boxes with letters and photos of her mother's heritage. And she also knew vaguely that there was something with musical notes in it. But the family had always believed that these notes were sketches, were just little exercises. On that very moment, she went upstairs to the attic and she got the boxes out. And there was a whole pile of compositions by Dick Kattenburg. And she called Ed Spanjaard, who was totally taken away with this incredible findings, especially because another piece out of that pile was written for Ima, for his mother. And since I had then already established my concert series here in Amsterdam, the Uilenburger Concerten, monthly concerts promoting music by forgotten composers, he called me up and we got a bunch of musicians together, and around Ed Spanjaard's piano we started to play the music that had been found, and we were incredibly thrilled. I often call Dick Kattenburg the Dutch Gershwin. He writes these wonderful melodies. He has very often a very jazzy touch in his music. And there was so much music that we could produce a whole CD with it. And the interesting thing is that all the people I know, they love Dick Kattenburg's music, and I have performed it often, and it has been played now internationally. And also people who totally don't have a classical music background, they love this music because it really speaks to the heart.
I'm Elisaveta Agrafenina. I'm originally from Norway and Russia. I was born in Russia and I moved to Norway at a very young age. And now I'm here studying at the Conservatory of Amsterdam. Several years ago, before I met Dimitri, I discovered a lot of music by Rosie Wertheim, Henriette Bosmans, Jan van Gilse, and so on. And we made, together with friends of mine from England, Norway, Hungary, and the Netherlands, a project called Zwarte Avonden. Zwarte Avonden is Black Evenings, and it's about music which were forbidden during the Second World War. Since then, I have been researching more about Dutch female composers as well as male Dutch composers. But I found it very intriguing that such a country could have so many wonderful composers and so much unknown music. So when I met Dimitri this semester, we started a course together, and naturally we are both writing a research based on these topics. And I invited him first to play the Concertstuk, which is like a concert piece with violin and piano for a concert series I organized with Dutch female composers. And in return, of course, I wanted to be a part of his concert, performing quite interesting music by Belinfante, Kattenburg, and Herman.
I am Corrie Herman. My father was Paul Herman, the composer, or really the cellist and composer. He was born in 1902 in Budapest, and from the age of 15 he attended the Franz Liszt Academy, the famous music conservatorium in Budapest. As from 1922-23, he left Budapest and went to Berlin, where he stayed up till 1933, when Hitler came into power and Jewish people were no longer allowed to keep their jobs. He was a professor in a music school and in that period, and so then he had to leave. Unfortunately, a lot of the compositions which he made during that period were not kept because they were not put into print. He played them with friends and so on, and we no longer have them. But we still have, happily, some of the piano music and also a part of a cello concerto and other pieces. 33 was a bad year, not only because my father had to leave Berlin, but also because that summer my mother, when swimming in the sea, got water in her lungs. She got pneumonia, which was a very serious disease. And then, because there were not the medicines which we have nowadays, and a few months later she died. That was, of course, very hard for my father, losing his job, his house, his wife, and having a small daughter. But my father first went to Brussels and later on to Paris. In 1940, you know, the Germans came in France and conquered France. And then my father left Paris and first went to the southern part of France, which was at first not occupied by the Germans. But later on, they came there also. And he was living in Toulouse, had false papers so that he could, well, be quasi non-Jewish, but at a certain moment he was in a street razzia, taken in, and then they discovered his real identity. He was put on a transport which is in France rather famous because it's called the 73rd transport to Auschwitz. But that transport did not stay in Auschwitz, it went on to Lithuania, halfway over Europe. Unthinkable what people must have suffered, days and days without food and hardly any water in a train. And from that transport of about 800 people, only a few have returned, and so we don't know what has happened there in 1944. Well, that being as it is, we are very happy to have some of his music. The piano suite which Dimitri is going to play is an early work. We think it was composed in 24. Allegretto, molto allegro and lento, and you can hear the influence of my father's composition professors, Bartók and Kodály. And so it's happy music, it makes you laugh and it makes you listen.
Józef Kofler was born in 1896 in Poland, and he was the first Polish composer to use the dodecaphonic technique as early as 1926. So in fact, he was even one of the first composers in general to use that technique. He was much inspired by Schoenberg and Berg, of course, but his music is quite different and quite personal and very interesting and of very good quality. In the sonatine I'm performing tonight, which was written in 1930, you can hear, so it's dodecaphonic music, but still very melodic and very nice to listen to. And Kofler was killed in 1944 by the Einsatzgruppen with his whole family.
I'm Dimitri Zsuzsa. I'm a Hungarian flutist student at Conservatorium van Amsterdam. I'm doing pre-master here, and and I met Dimitri, and he came up with this project, and I wasn't familiar at all with it, but I started searching and I found out how many Jewish composers were active that period of time during the Second World War. They had concerts in secret, and they had the opportunity to compose. Composing music, it's not just a piece of paper and a pen, but you need your heart, you need your soul. I can imagine their hands were really dry and burned maybe. They were digging or they were working really hard. And how grotesque is that to compose? But anyway, they did it, and we had the opportunity after 75 years to perform. If we manage somehow to be compassionate about those composers, that means we found those missing voices.
Daniel Belinfante, a Dutch composer, killed in Auschwitz. We got an email from an Italian pianist, Francesco Lotoro, and he wrote to us, "Do you know any Dutch composers who wrote music in the camp?" And it turned out that he had made a very big project focusing on music that was composed in the concentration camps. And we didn't know, but we did some research, and especially my pianist at the time, Marcel Worms, was very interested because there was a lot of piano music by Daniel Belinfante. If Daniel Belinfante really composed in the camps, I don't think so. We knew other composers who did, for instance, Marius Vlothuis. But Daniel Belinfante, I don't think so. But in any case, we got our attention on his music, and it turned out there was so much. And it was almost never performed. Also not during his lifetime. So, but we got very intrigued by this music because, yeah, it has a very interesting harmonies. It's very often bitonal or polytonal, and in a way it reminds me of Darius Milhaud. And sometimes Dan Belinfante has also used the name Darius as a sort of a nickname. So there is obviously a strong connection. Still, not much of his music is performed, and I hope very much that more people will perform his music. He ended up in Auschwitz, where he also was for quite a while. But then he got ill, and in the camp there was a sort of small hospital, not a hospital, but I guess just a barrack for where they kept the ill people. And then it was already at the end of the war, and the Russians were coming to liberate the camps. And so they wanted to get rid of the prisoners, and a lot of prisoners were sent on these death marches. But the people who were in that hospital, let's say, call it that way, they just put it on fire and they burned it. So he was burned alive.
It has been a new discovery for me. I didn't really know those composers, and reading about their music and about the compositions, history, it's really intriguing, and it made me really interested in performing this as well. They're quite different in style. I think my favorite, I would say, is Paul Herman, because the music is quite French. I would say it's very much Debussy/Ravel like, and of course for a singer that's something which is great to perform. There is also Kattenburg with Palestinian songs, and I don't know why, but I've always been very intrigued by Yiddish, Hebrew, and Jewish music in general. And for me to perform this is kind of opening a new window in my life, but also it feels like something from my past. The texts are quite simple, the music, the melodies as well, but that makes it actually more interesting, that you can discover so many colors in it and make it into a nice story, your own story.
It's very important that their work is performed, because that's the only way in which we can remember these people.